This is K.M. Weiland, and you're listening to the 36th episode of the Wordplay Podcast. The great thing about the research phase of writing is that it's the easiest to take on the go. Just tuck your book under your arm and head out the door. Years ago, I was given a set of nifty bookmarks. Somebody had the brilliant realization that books and writing utensils just obviously go together. So they invented a flat pin that you can stick between the pages. It marks your place when you're not reading, transforms into a pin when you need to take notes, and is slender enough not to bulge the covers. It's even got a hook at the top to slide over the page and hold it in place. I slip a piece of notepaper inside the front cover, and I'm all set to turn my afternoon at the hairdresser into a productive research session. By the way, I wish I could share the brand of the bookmarks, but unfortunately I threw the package away long ago. Don't forget to take a peek at the new video series on my blog. The latest episode, Character Competition, Saint or Sinner, takes a look at the two main characters in Alexandre Dumas's The Last Cavalier, and explains why perfect characters simply aren't interesting. You can watch the video on my blog at wordplay-kmweiland, that's weiland.blogspot.com. New videos are posted every Wednesday. Meanwhile, enjoy this week's podcast, Plot versus Character. Which is more important? Authors debate plot versus character as if the two are gladiators, waging war on the sands of the Colosseum in some winner-take-all death battle. Both sides of the debate claim a definitive superiority for their chosen gladiator. And for the most part, the battle splits nicely down the lines of literary and commercial fiction, the commercialists placing the emphasis on plot in the interest of producing page-turners, while the literati poke up their noses at the thought of anything so crude and artless. So who's right? As in most conflicts, there is a conclusive answer. But in this instance, it isn't an answer held by either set of extremists. Rather, it's the answer held by both. The simple fact is that fiction requires both plot and character to achieve its full potential. One could argue convincingly from both sides of the subject. One, that stories originated from plot. First this happens, which then causes this to happen. Or two, that stories originated from character. This person did this, and then that person did that. But why bother with such an argument when, by focusing on both facets, we can produce a story that contains both a riveting plot and a fascinating character? It's unfortunate that many within the literary world have decided that stories must be either character stories or plot stories, when, in fact, the two are symbionts. It's very true that storytelling originally focused more on plot than character, and has evolved over the years to put more emphasis on character. In his book, Characters and Viewpoint, Orson Scott Card elucidates. Character stories really came into their own at the beginning of the 20th century, and both the novelty and the extraordinary brilliance of some of the writers who worked with this story structure have led many critics and teachers to believe that only this kind of story can be good. Character stories have been so dominant that they have forced storytellers in the other traditions to pay more attention to characterization. Even though a story is not about a transformation of character, the readers still expect to get to know the characters, and even when they don't expect it, they are willing to allow the author to devote a certain amount of attention to the character without regarding it as a digression. This is the fashion of our time, and you can't disregard it. But neither can we disregard plot, as pointed out in Lev Grossman's article, Good Novels Don't Have to Be Hard. Where did this conspiracy come from in the first place, the plot against plot? I blame the modernists, who were, I grant you, the single greatest crop of writers the novel has ever seen. But let's look back for a second at where the modernists came from, and what exactly they did with the novel. One of the things they broke was plot. To the modernists, stories were a distortion of real life. In real life, stories don't tie up neatly. Events don't line up in tidy sequence and mean the same things to everybody they happen to. In writers' groups, writing forums, query letters, and agent interviews, we're often asked to pigeonhole our stories on one side or the other of the plot versus character controversy. It's true that most writers, depending on the individual manner in which they approach inspiration and organization, put at least a slight emphasis on one or the other. And there's nothing wrong with this, no matter where the emphasis lands. But this is no reason to focus on one to the exclusion of the other. Fiction is about balance, in so many ways, and certainly nowhere more so than in the matter of plot versus character. Good writing should not be about pitting plot against character, but rather about finding the harmony between them. Thank you for listening to the Wordplay Podcast. To read a transcript of this episode, visit me on the web at wordplay-kmwyland, that's weiland.blogspot.com, and be sure to listen again next week.